All right, so we're diving into something a little different today. You shared this mini test from the Spiritual Seek website called "Do You Suffer from Depression?" And right off the bat, I want to be super clear. Like, this is not a substitute for a real diagnosis from a professional. This is more like a starting point, for thinking about things.
Yeah, definitely. It's more like like a compass giving you some possible directions, but not like the entire map.
Exactly. It's so easy to just kind of brush off feeling down sometimes. But this test makes us really look at those feelings. Are they just temporary? Or is there something more serious going on?
And it does that in a really interesting way. It focuses on 5 key areas with multiple choice questions. And what I find really fascinating is that the questions actually target these kind of hidden ways that depression can show up.
Okay, so let's break that down a bit. Like, the first question is all about how you feel in the morning. Most people wouldn't automatically think that's connected to depression, right?
Right. We all have those mornings where we're like, oof. But this question really wants you to think about whether that heavy feeling is happening all the time. Like, is it a pattern? It kind of hints at how depression can mess with your sense of time and even make a brand new day feel scary.
That's such a good point. It's not just being grumpy. It's that feeling like seeping into like your everyday experience.
Exactly. And then the test goes even deeper and looks at how you see yourself, like how confident you feel or how capable. This is where it gets really interesting because it shows how depression can really impact your self-worth.
Yeah.
It asks, do you see yourself in a positive light? Or are you always feeling like you're not good enough?
Yeah, I think we've all felt that way sometimes. Like inadequate.
Mm-hmm.
But the test wants you to think about whether those feelings are always there. And if they are, maybe it's a sign of something deeper.
It's pushing you to go past those surface level emotions and see where they're really coming from. Are they just because of what's going on right now? Or is it something more stuck with you? It's a little nudge to be more self-aware.
I like that. And it keeps going with that idea in the next question, which is about social connections. We all know that withdrawing from people can be a sign of depression. But the test is smart. It knows that it's not always so black and white.
Yeah, exactly. Just because you feel drained by hanging out with people doesn't mean you're depressed. It could be you're just an introvert, or you have social anxiety, or maybe you're just hanging out with the wrong people. The test wants you to figure out the why behind those feelings.
Yeah, it's like it's saying, hey, pay attention to what's going on, but don't jump to conclusions. I like that. It's nuanced.
Yeah, I agree. And then it hits on a big one. Your outlook on the future, feeling hopeless, is a classic sign of depression. But even the most optimistic people have moments of doubt, right?
Oh, for sure. It's all about the overall trend, not just one little worry. And that's where the test's focus on patterns really helps.
Absolutely. It helps you see the difference between a mood that will pass and a state of mind that's sticking around. And finally, it looks at how you deal with stress, like how you cope. Feeling totally paralyzed by challenges is a major red flag.
Right, because when you're just overwhelmed like that, it affects like everything, right? Your work, your relationships, even just like simple everyday stuff.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is the test kind of acknowledges that even if you feel like you're handling stress, okay, there's still reasons to think about it more.
Yeah, for sure. It wants you to really look at how you're coping. Are you doing it in a healthy way that you can keep up? Or are you just pushing stuff down and maybe creating even more stress in the long run? It's a reminder that being self-aware is super important, even when you think you've got it all figured out.
It's like a checkup for your coping skills.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about how the test looks at your answers. What I thought was really interesting is that it doesn't use like a regular point system.
Right. It's not about adding up points. It's about seeing patterns. It puts your answers into 4 groups. Mostly A's means you're probably pretty balanced. And mostly B's means you've got some struggles, but overall things are stable.
So it's more like a spectrum instead of like pass or fail.
Exactly. Mostly C's show signs of strain that you should probably look into more. And mostly D's means there's some serious distress going on, and you should probably get professional help. But here's the important thing. The test is really clear that these groups are just guidance. They're not labels.
It's not about putting yourself in a box. It's about understanding where you are on that spectrum and then what you can do about it. Even if you're mostly A's. I mean, who couldn't use a little self-care, right?
Exactly. And that's where I think this test is really valuable. It's not just about finding problems. It's about being proactive about your mental health. It's about making self-reflection and self-care normal parts of taking care of yourself.
Yeah, it's like that saying, you can't pour from an empty cup. Taking care of your mental health helps you, but it also helps your relationships and everything else in your life.
I like that analogy. It shows how taking care of yourself has a ripple effect. Okay, so we've talked about what this test does well, but there are some important things that it doesn't cover.
This is the part that I find really interesting. So we've seen what the test can do, But what are its limitations?
Well, first of all, it doesn't really talk about the physical symptoms of depression, like changes in your sleep, how much you're eating, your energy levels. Those are all important signs. But this test doesn't really address those.
So it's more focused on the emotional and thinking parts, right? Like how you think and feel instead of how your body reacts.
Exactly. And it also doesn't talk about the different types of depression. It's not a one-size-fits-all thing. There's major depressive disorder, persistent depressive disorder, postpartum depression. Those are all different conditions with their own unique characteristics and complexities.
It's a good reminder that depression is a really complex experience, and this test is really just scratching the surface.
Right. And it doesn't really get into the underlying causes of depression, which can be really diverse and complicated.
So we're talking about genetics, things that have happened in your life, chemical imbalances. Yeah. It's a whole web of factors that the test doesn't try to untangle.
Exactly. And that makes sense considering what it's trying to do. It's meant to be a starting point for exploring yourself, not a complete diagnostic tool.
So it's like a doorway into a much bigger conversation about mental health.
Exactly. And I think that's one of the best things about it. It makes you curious. It makes you ask more questions. And it encourages you to really try to understand things better.
Yeah, totally. And if it helps even just one person realize they need to reach out for professional help, then it's done something really important.
For sure. But it's also important to remember that even if you don't feel like you need help right now, this test can still teach you something valuable.
It's about being more aware of your emotions, recognizing patterns, and doing things to take care of your mental health.
And that brings up a really interesting point. This test is all about you, your own experience. But what if we thought about how our relationships affect our mental health? How might that change our answers?
Wow, that's a great point. Think about it. A supportive partner, close friends, a loving family, those can really protect you from stress and negativity. But on the other hand, toxic relationships can be super draining and really bad for you.
And it goes both ways. The way you're feeling mentally can affect how you treat other people. And then the way they treat you can affect how you're feeling. It's all connected.
So maybe this test is just the first step. It helps us think about ourselves. But then we can think about how our relationships might be influencing our answers too.
Yeah.
It's like adding a whole new layer to the conversation.
Yeah. It's like realizing that mental health isn't just about you. It's also about the people around you and how you all connect.
Exactly. And that adds like a whole other level of complexity that we should think about. How would your answers to this test change if you were thinking about the people you're closest to? Are they supporting you? Or are they causing you stress? Do they lift you up? Or do they bring you down?
Those are really good questions. And it makes me think that maybe this test could be something you talk about with people. Not just for yourself, but with your friends and family. It could help you understand each other better. I like that idea. It could help people be more understanding and have more empathy in their relationships. And maybe it could even help people make positive changes both on their own and together.
Yeah, it's like taking stock of your relationships at the same time you're checking in with yourself. We talked about how this test doesn't cover everything, but I think it's really cool how it makes you think about things more deeply.
Absolutely. And that's what makes a deep dive like this so interesting. We go beyond just the surface level. We look at all the details, and we find new ways to understand mental health, both for ourselves and in our relationships.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, here's something to think about. Remember your answers to the test. Okay, now imagine answering those same questions, but from the point of view of someone close to you, like your partner, a friend, a family member. Would your answers be different? And if so, what does that tell you?
That's a great question to leave our listeners with. It challenges us to not just understand ourselves, but to also think about the mental well-being of the people we care about. We're all connected, and realizing that can be really powerful.
I totally agree. You can find some helpful resources in the show notes as always. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.